Hey guys, as you know, in the new Pariah Nexus mission pack, Battleline units have gained much more importance because of the mission rules that benefit them as well as the secret missions relying on them. So in this video, we'll take a look at the best Battleline choices Space Marines have. So without further ado, let's dive right in. And I want to preface that by saying that Space Marines, unlike some other factions in 40k, don't actually have a lot of variety to the Battleline choices they can draw from. Surprisingly, even though the Space Marines are arguably one of the most numerous armies in the game with so many data sheets to pull from. The reason being here is that because of how many data sheets we have, GW have only given the Battleline keyword to the very few of data sheets, even those that would previously be called troops, like for example Incursors and Infiltrators, had no longer Battleline, so they would not get the benefits of usually OC2 compared to OC1, and also all the mission benefits such as being able to action and shoot, being able to action and advance, action and being in combat, and so on and so forth. And those are quite numerous. I think it's 13 missions out of 20 in the competitive mission pack have some sort of benefit for the battle line. It's not something that would be game breaking, so if you don't have any battle line, that is not the biggest problem. The biggest problem is your opponent being able to score War of Attrition, which is one of the secret missions available where you only have to put a battle line unit in the deployment zone of your opponent, which in this case would be you, when you don't have any battle line choices on the table, or all of your Battleline units are within your deployment zone as well, which is something that often happens. So you need to pay attention to that. And here we come to our first contender. So Heavy Intercessor Squad, the chunkiest of all the Space Marine vanilla Battleline units. 20 points a pop, so 100 points for a unit of 5. The same cost as the Infiltrators, which I remind you are not Battleline. I wish they were, because then they would be arguably the best one out of these all, and they would definitely be at number 1 in this top 5, but alas. In terms of durability, the Heavy Intercessors, as you can imagine, are much better in that regard than the normal ones, and they feature toughness 6, 3+ armor save, and 3 wounds each. Well, 3+ armor save is nothing special, but the toughness 6 and 3 wounds are. It's a seriously impressive stat line which will help you protect yourself from being wounded on 2s with both strength 8, which are something that usually wounds any kind of normal marine body on 2s, and also strength 10 guns, which also will normal heavy marine bodies on 2s like Terminators. You need a proper las cannon to wound these guys on 2s, and that's something pretty impressive for just a Battleline choice. Wounds help a lot against normal Space Marine killing guns or melee weapons, so anything that is damage 2 like Blade Guard swords will not be that good against the Heavy Intercessors. No one wants to shoot damage 3 guns at the unit that is on the home objective. It just doesn't feel right. In addition to that, they also have a cool rule which allows them to have +1 to the armor save, which is essentially 2+ armor, against damage 1 attack. So it's both melee and shooting. Mostly, of course, it's going to be shooting, but sometimes, who knows, maybe you get attacked by Nurglings or something. This will make them really inefficient to be targeted by any normal anti-infantry guns, so they will be just as durable against that as Terminators, which are obviously of a very different price range. In terms of output, these guys are not the best, because shooting Intercessors have never been that great, and they are not still. They have upgraded bolt rifles which get extra 6-inch range, so they have 30 inches of range and strength 5 compared to normal Intercessors having strength 4, AP 1, damage 1. They also get 2 shots, and they get assault, so you can advance and shoot these guys. Previously you could have also done action and advance, but no longer. And they have heavy, so if they stay stationary they will hit on 2s. I'm not gonna lie, these guys are not killing anyone anytime soon. Maybe they're gonna finish off some very wounded squad of infantry. That's the best you can hope for. Damage is gonna be assisted by a heavy bolter that you can have in the unit. Unfortunately, they for some reason decided to get rid of the Hellstorm and the Executor bolters, heavy bolters that we were previously able to choose, which I think they are correct in that they removed the bolt rifle versions, but the heavy bolter, it would be cool to still have those alternatives, because the one that I'd really like was the Executor with damage 3, so it was a pretty potent weapon. So it's obvious, I really like these guys for the durability they offer. It's really difficult to get them off of an objective, and that's pretty much all you want from the unit that you want to put on your home objective and stay there. Also, if you suspect your opponent that they are trying to get War of Attrition, you can just either kill all of their battle line or march these guys out of your deployment zone onto a no man's land objective. This way you're preventing 2 out of 4 Secret missions, and the last one, which is like kill all the models on the tabletop, is something that no one will ever choose, very likely, anyways, or if they do, you've lost anyways. So having that extra durable Battleline unit at the end of the game can be very useful, because at the end of the game, most resources on both sides are depleted. And if you have something like that at the end of the game, again, it's going to be very difficult for your opponent to deal with that when all, hopefully, or most of their damaging assets have already been dealt with or severely damaged. I just wish that we had some sort of melee on the Sergeant at least, because the Sergeants have always had some sort of extra weapon to them, and it's not like Gravis cannot fight, because we know Gravis Captain can have the Power Fist, can have the Power Sword, he can have everything the normal Captain has. Well, why does not the Sergeant have the same? Well, because the Sergeant in the normal Intercessor squads, they have it. It feels like GW have just, when they were releasing the heavy intercessors a few years ago, they just forgot that the intercessors should have guns, or they thought, no, we'll make these guys the shooty ones, even though they cannot shoot anything, to be honest. So I don't know why they did it. In any case, it's not a big problem for them. It's not something deal-breaking. It's just something that is annoying. As always, I want to remind you about my Patreon 40K coaching service. If you're looking for help building your competitive rosters, preparing you for tournaments, or have any questions about your collection in general, check out the links for my Patreon in the description. Thank you. Next are the humble intercessors. I'm still waiting for the day when they become good enough for me to run 60 of them in my Death Watch, because that was something I really dreamed of when I was starting out with my Death Watch back in 8th edition, back in the glory days of the special issue ammunition, when we could just hear this, have the bolt rifles on the intercessors fire, and essentially 2+ wounding thing, which was wounding anything that is not, I think, vehicle or monster, on 2s, and that was crazy. And you could also get like extra AP and extra range, or extra 2 AP and -6 range, which was very cool. We don't have any of that anymore, and the intercessors are not good enough to run them as a 60-man blob, or 6 blobs of 10, I should say. But they are good enough to be our sort of quote-unquote mandatory Battleline choice. You don't really need to have Battleline, because you can very well win a bunch of games without having them, and they're just a little safety mechanism against the secret missions. And also, if the Battleline are really good, it's just nice to have those extra mission rules helping you. So why would you run normal intercessors? So if you want to have Battleline, the main reason to take these guys is objective secured rule, which is the sticky objectives rule in the colloquial language. It's helpful in many common situations where you need to leave the objective, or you have to leave one. For example, your unit being shot off that objective by your opponent's unit that deep struck in your deployment zone, you are unable to screen them out, and they killed your intercessors on that objective. So now your opponent is close to the objective, but hopefully not on it if they didn't deep strike within 3 inches or something like that. So you will not control it unless you have sticky, and then if you have it, then them shooting you off of that objective is not a problem, at least for this turn. So a very useful rule. It's also great if you need to leave the home objective but still control it. So for example, you have to take an objective in no man's land, and there's nothing else that can take it for you. You can just advance your intercessors out and take that objective while still holding on to your home one. They do have the bolt rifles, which are strength 4 in this case, not strength 5 like heavy intercessors. Still 2 shots, still assault, and still heavy. You're not killing anyone with this, but it's still better than normal bolters, so I guess we have to be thankful for this. Your Sergeant can have, in this case, a special weapon, which is Thunderhammer, Power Fist, or Power Sword, I think, or Chain Sword you also can have. And considering we're not paying anything for these, you probably want to have either Thunderhammer or Power Fist. Power Fist is a bit more consistent, so I would take that. Our Space Wolf specific unit, which are the Great Hunters. They cost 85 points per 5, and I really like them because they can advance and shoot and fall back and shoot, which makes them a really useful, cheap skirmish unit. And depending on the detachment you're gonna run, which can be Gladius, Champions of Rust, which was upgraded recently, or Stormlands, they'd also be able to charge afterwards, making them a really useful skirmish unit. Of course, it's important to note that they would absolutely pale in comparison with the jump back intercessors, which are 5 points cheaper, if you can believe that. But the jump back Intercessors, even though they're called Intercessors, are not Battleline. So having one of these guys, if you're running a Space Wolves army, is not going to be detrimental, even if you're running a super competitive list, in my opinion. I really like the fact that we can run 2 Melta guns in the unit, or 2 plasma guns. I would just personally like the Melta, because you have 3 ablative models before you have to remove the Melta guns, making them a pretty survivable kind of a small Melta choice. And all the models in the unit can have chainswords. 1 extra guy can carry a plasma pistol, though it doesn't have to be a sergeant, which is funny. And the sergeant can also have a power fist, so they can do a little bit of shooting, they can do a little bit of fighting, and they can also be quite mobile with their fall back and shoot. They are far from being an auto-include, don't get me wrong, but having 1, maybe 2 of these, if you really like them, in your Space Wolves army and have that on the field Battleline unit can be a good idea, I think. Thinking about including the blood claws here, but I honestly doubt that their damage output is gonna match the cost, especially considering the unit that we are gonna talk about next. And if you've seen my other videos, you've probably already guessed these are the Assault Intercessors. I've been promoting these on the channel for a while, and for a good reason, believe me. They are my favorite troops, but also they are actually really good. They are cheap, they have a ton of attacks with their chainswords. The sergeant obviously can have Thunderhammer or the Power Fist, and they get full rerolls to wound when they are targeting something that is on an objective, and that is quite an easy criteria to fulfill. Even if you're fighting not something on objective, you will still get reroll 1s to wound. Their profile of a chainsword, which is 4 attacks, strength 4, AP 1, damage 1, is pretty good when it starts getting full rerolls to wound, especially if you add any kinds of buffs on top of it, like a good buffing character, say a chaplain or a captain, or a good stratagem like Honor the Chapter. And the weight of attacks they're gonna have for 15 points a model or 75 points per unit of 5 is just staggering. I especially like these guys in Gladius, again, because of the Honor the Chapter, which is +1 to wound, or lance I should say, so +1 to wound on the charge, and also you get extra AP if you're in Assault Doctrine, so you can advance these guys, you can charge with them, and then use 1 CP and have +1 AP, so AP 2 on the chainswords, and +1 to wound. With full rerolls to wound, they are gonna punch way above their weight at 150 points. That's why I like running them in Gladius so much, because there I don't think they really need that much help from characters, making them that much cheaper. And the whole point of these kinds of units like Assault Intercessors, Jump Back Intercessors, is to keep them as cheap as possible, so you can have your actual like big points in other more elite units which are worth the extra investment. I don't think that investing too many points in the Assault Intercessors, like running a captain with them and the lieutenant, making the squad instead of 150 points, making it 200 and something, 260 at least, is worth it. I think the best way to run these is as cheap as possible, just bare bones, and making the best by using your detachment rules. But even a 5-man unit with a character, if you run them like 5-man unit with a lieutenant, for example, in an impulsor, they will be able to provide a significant threat for a lot of units that are much more expensive than them. Oh, in terms of other detachments, I really like them in Blood Angels, Sons of Sanguinius, because they will fight much harder with +1 attack and +2 strength, so the chainswords will essentially get +1 to wound almost always, and it can even be +2 to wound in some cases. If you're fighting a toughness 5 model, for example, strength 4 would wound on 5s, but then with strength 6 you would be wounding on 3, so that's like having +2 sorry, to the wound roll. You can also get permanent advance and charge from Stormlands, so fall back and charge, or a mix of those abilities with the new upgraded Champions of Rus. All in all, these guys are great. I absolutely love them as the 10-man squads or 5-man squads, whatever, and the fact that they're Battleline and also have OC2 is just amazing. Lastly, for my Black Templars fans, of course, the Primaris Crusader Squad, because this one is the closest you can get with the Battleline unit to something that feels elite and something you would want to invest points in for characters and upgrades. 14 points per model or 280 points for the full 20-man squad. You can go up to 20 men, which is surprising considering that most Space Marine squads top at 10. And in combination with Grimaldas that can make them faster and more durable, one after the other. So you first select them being durable, a 5+ shrug, and advance them, and then you would get the advance and charge for turn 2 to actually reach your opponent. Whole squad carries chainswords and a couple of power fists as well, I think 4 for a squad of 20. But their main thing, of course, is the volume of attacks. That's why you want to apply those modifiers as much as possible, like the +1 AP you would get from the Crusader's Wrath in the Righteous Crusaders detachment Black Templars, or 1 CP Vicious Riposte for fighting and death on 4s or 3s if you're running the correct Vow. The chapter in Gladius is a great one as well. +1 to wound for volume of chainsword attacks is always great, like we've just learned with the Assault Intercessors, and +1 AP, very helpful for AP1 weapons, which AP1 is very close to AP none, especially if you're fighting something that has Armor of Contempt. I'm looking at you, Sisters, Leagues of Votan, or other Space Marines. 11 models in the unit are 3+ save, 8 of them are 4+ save, but believe me, with the buffs from Grimaldus, which his buff would be 5+ Feel No Pain, they are very, very hard to get rid of. They also have inbuilt rerolls for advances and charges, and that's very useful, especially when you need to reach your opponent. You have several charges lined up, so you don't need to think about who you're going to charge first. You can charge the Primaris Crusader Squad first, because even if you use their reroll of a charge, it's not going to be a CP reroll, so you can use it later for some other unit. You also get Scout 6 on them, which unfortunately is going to cancel out if you attach a leader to them that doesn't have Scout, which none of them have as far as I know, so you will not use this unless you run them as a 20-man without a leader or a 10-man without a leader. I actually do like the idea of a 10-man Primaris Crusader Squad as a unit without a character. They would cost 140 points, which is like on the verge of what I would want to pay for this without the extra protection that Grimaldus gives, but it's an interesting concept and I think it is worth exploring. The main way I would recommend to run them for Black Templars is, of course, the 20-man unit with the Grimaldus for all the nice juicy buffs. Oh, turn 1 you get 5 Shrug, turn 2 you get Advance and Charge, and then turn 3, if you really want to and the squad is still alive, you can get extra AP on them just to finish off whatever you've charged. My biggest issue with this one is the sheer size of that unit, which therefore is hard to position and hard to hide. It's even hard for you to get all the models into combat because we're not going to get any extra special rules or buffs helping us, so you need to get in base-to-base contact with someone who's in base-to-base with the enemy unit to fight. To become proficient with this unit, you need to practice a lot, but the good thing about this one is that unlike smaller battle line choices, it's going to be very hard for your opponent to actually finish that one off, and that means the War of Attrition secret mission is going to be very difficult to choose for your opponent, because they would need to make sure that your battle line, in this case Primaris Crusader Squad, is not on the table anymore. Let me know which battle line choice you think is best, which one you use in your list. Thank you for watching, I'll see you next time.